I'm going to start out here on why Mr. Donaldson, you look lovely without your glasses. I'm starting the video here in Xcode, which is some place we're going to come back to during this video, which is all about the import and export of data that forms a recipe for Novillo, which I talked about in the last video. When I show you code related to Novillo, it's usually not that informative, but I show it to you here. But I use it more often to show you the output or results of the code that's running, and I will be using it for that because there are some parts of the UI that are just really underdeveloped and they don't show you anything, so you have to do it here. Okay, so I'm going to just basically now take us to Novillo. But before we do, I want to take you to the GitHub repository that I have. And this is a new part of the Git, well, it's not new, but it's never been shown in these videos before. A part called the gist section, where GitHub stores a whole lot of files in its repositories. A gist stores one file, one single document. And I'm using it as the place I'm going to store the documents that contain the recipes that I've been talking about. Okay, so we can see here that this is my account, and I can see I have things that have titles that are gists that basically are about different topics I've used in the past. But nothing in here is related to the Novillo that I'm working on. So we'll come back to that. Okay, so what makes gist useful, as I said, is that they can be, or maybe I didn't say this, but they can be created and they can be updated and they can be accessed from anywhere through an API. And an API just means that I can do the things I would do with the interface on the web here via a program that is simply communicating over the internet in response to things like button pushes and so forth, as long as I code it in. And that's what I've been working on, coding that in, that API connection to the gist section of GitHub. So, you know, for Novillo at this stage, the gist service is kind of the way I'm handling everything. It may not be adequate in the long run for certain reasons, and I'll probably have to build a more complex backend, but for now it's good. So to see how we actually use it, what the actual results are, I've just fired up Novillo, and I'm going to take a look at the editor section up there. So, so here in the start screen, opening up the editor, and I'm going to select the Novillo from the little selector that we've seen before. It's the same stuff we've been seeing forever. And it responds by saying, hey, you want to open this thing up? In response, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to. But what I have done, as I think I also said last video, is I've designated that particular project as the one that is the target for any operations I ask Novillo to perform on a project. And I have some buttons up at the top there that I'm going to be using to do that. So up here on the button bar, I have an export button, and I'm going to tap that. Now, as I said, the UI is not really developed for this whole thing yet, but the actions that it's taken are happening. So there's no feedback here. It seems like it didn't do anything. Maybe I'll just hammer it some more, but I'm not going to hammer it. I'm just going to go back and take a look at the results. And the way I can do that is I can go back to gist. And by going back to my gist thing, I can now see there's things the way they were, but when I reload, there's a new file. And you'll notice that that file has the name derived from the particulars of the project that I was interested in, which is to say, the name was Showpiece, the name of the account was Urbanistica, and the name of the repo was Showcase. Here, what we're looking at is the raw file, which is the data I actually sent up. And so you can see that now on GitHub, in the gist section, there's this copy of the data in encoded form, which is now available for download, if we can get as far as doing that. So that's a really great kind of place to get to. In the roadmap, I'd said there were two. One of the key things was the import-export function. And that has two parts. And one of them is to get stuff out of Novillo and somewhere else where other people can, in theory, access it. Well, they can access it through the interface if they have access to my gists. So this is the recipe, right? The recipe is now out of the world. It's like we now have a cookbook. And the ingredients are, to say it again, the repository of images that I created that I've been using for this demo project. So we fixed that problem. That's good. But there's another half of this, right? Which is the half which is when we import stuff. So in order for other people to download the project into their app, they need a tool to do that too. So let me just restart Novillo here. We're back, and this will be familiar to you. And if I do it this time, I'm going to open up the editor, but I will not tap the import button. I'm not going to select the project. I'm going to tap the import button, sorry. And what happens here when it asks me no project selected, do you want it? It gives me back the form that I normally use to create a Novillo, which has the name of the project, the name of the GitHub account, and the name of the repository that is associated with the project. And all I need to do here is to type those values in, which I will do. And there we go. And you'll notice, while this typing is happening, that the form has had its button changed from what you might have seen it before, which it said new, which was to create a new Novillo. And now it says load, which basically means load one match to this. So basically, there we go, that's done, and I'm hitting the load button. Now, one of the things that I said, again, is that the UI is not developed yet, so you don't get any feedback back here. So I'm going to be able to show you, though, what happened if I now return to Xcode. So let's do that. Here's Xcode, and we can see now in the feedback where this is pretty much empty. Now this is filled with this plethora of information, which you will probably be able to recognize is the same data coming back into Novillo. Now, of course, this information exists in this Novillo because this is where that project originates from. But this is also true if it's a different, iPad, different device. And so now anybody who has Novillo loaded on their iPad can do what you just said. And this recipe contains within it the location where the files are stored. So from here, we can move forward to downloading the entire project, reconstructing it, and then allowing the person to at least read the Novillo. That's the achievement. So I'm really pleased with this. This is actually really good. Basically, there's still a lot of work to be done. And the most immediate work that has to be done is that what you're seeing here is still just a big chunk of text. It's a text representation of the actual data that the thing started from. And I've got to reverse that because I originally encoded the data into text. Now I got to take it from text back into data. But that's effectively the reverse process of the encoding process. So it will probably be fairly easy. The main thing is that in and out process of importing, importing data now has an accessible outside location that data can be found at for people. So it's really solved a significant problem. And if I was creating a Novillo and I wanted you to read it, I would give you that information, you could load it and so on. And if you were creating a Novillo, as inevitably you'll succumb to the temptation to do, this would be what you would be doing. This will get more sophisticated, this will get more finished, but as a kind of marker in a milestone, if you like, in the pathway to getting Novillo working as an interactive app between people, sharing stories and so forth, I think this is a pretty great moment. Okay, that's it, Dan, the Novillo boy. The Novillo is the king of this and that, and I'm going to go back to the middle now. There! I'm at the center, where I belong.